Hi, I'm Erick Knowles. I'm the president of the Miami Dade Chamber of Commerce, and we're back at our member connection. And I'm always thrilled to be in this seat because, you have this opportunity to sit with some amazing people. And today, it is no different. I'm here with Dr. Dorothy Jenkins Fields, and who heads up. I'm going to let her tell you because I don't want to mix it up. But it is such a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much. It's a long time coming. Thank you for being patient.
Hey, patience is a virtue. That's one thing about me. You will always know me to be a patient man.
Okay.
Nothing before it's time.
All right. Well,
absolutely.
Yes, and so we didn't make for Black History Month, but we're here for Women's History Month and International Women's Day.
Correct.
So I am delighted to be here and to share my story.
And it's an amazing story. I know you head up the Black Archives and the Historical Lyric Theater. They call it the
Playhouse of the South.
Correct.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about Dr. Fields. Where did you grow up? Who's Dr. Fields?
I am a native Miamian.
Okay.
My grandparents, my maternal grandparents, migrated here from the Bahamas.
Okay.
They started in the late 1890s. My understanding is that my grandmother worked for a white family, and the husband was a doctor in Harbor Island, Bahamas.
Okay.
And she kind of learned from them and got a lot of information, and whenever they would have old newspapers from the States, she'd collect them, and they'd say, Ida, put those papers in the trash. Instead of putting them in the trash, she'd take them home.
Right.
Read them and find out that Black people in the States, we're talking about the late 1890s now,
wow,
were doing well
right.
in Jacksonville and Atlanta,
okay.
and that there were schools. So even though she wasn't married at the time, the old-fashioned way, she wanted to get married and have children.
Right.
And get to either Jacksonville or Atlanta so that the children that she was going to have could be educated.
Wow.
Got married, got to Key West. 2 children were born.
Okay.
Got to Avenue G in Miami. We had relatives, Thelma Gibson and other relatives in Coconut Grove, but my grandmother said that was the sticks. She didn't want to be in the wilderness.
Right.
She wanted to be in the city.
Right.
So Northwest 2nd Avenue then was Avenue G. And she and my grandfather settled there with the 2 children. Later on, they had 5 children.
Wow. Within
13 years, they had 7 children. And so they didn't, the short story is they didn't get to Jacksonville
or Atlanta.
or Atlanta.
Ended up in Miami.
With 7 children.
Wow.
From 1900 to 1913.
And that was your grandmother?
That was my maternal grandmother. Yes,
okay.
Ida Ellen Johnson.
Okay.
And so fast forward, when I was born, my mother, her 2 sisters, 4 brothers were all college graduates before the end of World War II.
Wow.
And as I started this research and talked with Arbor Parks, who of course was Miami's historian for the city of Miami, she said that she didn't know of a white family that had as many as 7 children to all be college trained and return to Miami as professionals before the end of World War II. So when I was born, there were 2 medical doctors, one board certified in family medicine. His office was on 3rd Avenue and 11th Street. That was Dr. J.K. Johnson, Sr., my mother's 3rd brother.
Okay.
The other brother, who was a medical doctor, board certified, Dr. S.H. Johnson, who was very interested in radiology, because when he finished Meharry and came back to work in the early 30s, he practiced in my grandmother's living room at 159 Northwest 10th Street, 2 blocks north of the Lyric.
Okay.
I didn't know any of this when I
Right.
started.
Right.
But because he had a patient with a broken kneecap, took the patient to the hospital, Jackson Memorial. It was then called City Hospital.
Okay.
And you know the pink building that sits in the middle of the campus?
Right.
That was the entire hospital,
Right.
the Alamo.
Right. You know, it's so amazing when you think about, you know, Miami and what we see today, and obviously the transformation that's happened in the last just 5 years.
Yes.
And when you talk about that, and as you said, your mother didn't want to live in the sticks in the
Right.
Grove.
Grove.
And when we talk about the Grove and what it is now, you know, you are a historian, and wow, to have so much history even within your immediate family, that is truly amazing. You know, as you said, you started the Black Archives. Let's
Yes.
talk about that. It is a nonprofit. It is a business.
It's a business, yes.
Exactly.
It's a business where any money that is made is reinvested into the business. And Timothy Barber, who is our executive director, and Camila Pritchard, who is the program manager, are both very aware of that and are very much doing that very thing to keep that building, that whole complex, which now is worth millions.
Right.
I started as a school librarian.
Okay.
Wanted to prepare for the bicentennial in 1974.
Oh, boy.
Called the downtown library. I was at an all-white school, Myrtle Grove in Opelika.
I'm familiar.
Yes, at the time it was all white. And I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And my then husband was in law school. So I didn't have any extra time to do anything. But I was accustomed to going to the library, taking the girls, going to the library, getting extra books for teachers for things that they were working on. So I thought I could call the downtown library this day and get them to pull about 25 books about blacks for me so that I could get down there and get back very quickly. When I called and I asked told her what I wanted, she put me on hold, came back. She said, "We only have a folder about black people in Dade County." I said, "This is the Miami Public Library downtown, the main office on Biscayne Boulevard then." So I asked why, and the answer she gave changed my life and the life of the community as it relates to black history. She said, "I guess those people haven't thought enough of themselves to write their history."
Wow.
Exactly.
Wow.
So fast forward, I didn't believe it. I kept calling and asking, and she said, "Call
That can't be true."
It can't be true. But I couldn't prove, I was a librarian, and I couldn't prove her wrong. Called the Historical Museum, now History Miami.
Right.
And I talked with Dr. Thelma Peters and Arbor Parks, and they didn't know anything about black history. Although they were both writing books and they had talked with some black people and they'd gotten some pictures and they'd gotten some information, but no one seemed interested beyond that.
Wow.
And so finally I got myself reassigned from a school library downtown as a social studies teacher with the understanding that I had 2 years to write a book. I haven't really written the book yet.
But you've done a lot in between.
So instead of writing the book, I went to Emory University, got certification in a new field called Archives Administration.
Okay.
And as a part of that program, they said, and I told them my story, they said, "Well, you need to write a book. I mean, you need to establish your own archives." I said, "I can't do that. Only the National Archives." They said, "No, you can have a community archives."
Okay.
And I was going to have it in my uncle's business, which was the X-ray clinic.
Okay.
He actually built an X-ray clinic after the Jackson Memorial would not allow, well, it wasn't Jackson, it was a city hospital,
Right.
would not allow his patient to be X-rayed at the Alamo.
Wow.
So he went to Cook County Hospital in Chicago and became a radiologist, specialized in radiology, came back and built a clinic. And so that's a business that he gave me for the archives. And thanks to Timothy Barber and Audrey Edmondson, when she was in the county, money was made available finally to restore that as a business. and we're looking now for a reuse. And I keep saying to staff, be sure to do a market study,
Right.
so that you can see what the area will hold. Because Uncle Sammy, being a businessman, he had owned quite a bit of real estate, as well as being a physician. Wanted to be sure that the X-ray clinic that he left would be able to provide revenue to help keep the archives going.
Tell us a little bit about him.
I didn't have an opportunity to meet him.
Right.
But my uncle, the radiologist, was his doctor.
Okay. Okay.
So I got to hear plenty of stories.
Right.
About D.A. Dorsey, who was, although now he is pictured as a philanthropist, who was far from it, and who would, as Uncle Sammy would say, deny it. He did not give money away. He made money available when it was needed to those who needed it.
Right.
But his business sense was of such that it appears that he modeled himself after Flagler. In fact, some called him the Black Flagler. He saw Henry Flagler developing all the real estate,
Right.
For workers.
Okay.
And D.A. Dorsey started doing the same thing. But he did it on his own terms. And D.A. Dorsey was an independent contractor. He built his own home, and he built many other homes in the area and rented them to blacks. He owned property all over. He owned property, of course, Fisher Island. He bought.
And that's the one that most of us know about. And I believe the property that was once Burdine's.
Yes.
That's Burdine's, which was now Macy's, which is now, I believe I know it right there. Not a Marshall's, it's a Ross.
And I've also heard that he loaned Burdine's money. It's interesting that the family never accepted that. They have, to my knowledge, maybe they've never seen the documents.
Right.
And I can understand not wanting to talk about that.
Something that they didn't
really have the evidence
right.
for.
Right.
And that's one thing about history, and that's one thing about archives. That's why I didn't start off just writing a book.
Right.
It was important to me as a teacher, as an educator, to identify, collect, and process primary sources, to look at the deeds, to look at the certificates, to look at any evidence that showed that this really happened. So oral history in itself, for me, is not enough.
Yeah, because
anybody can say it.
Anybody can say it, and as conversations go, they become embellished and they change along the way.
Yes.
Well, we hear about the signs that were around on Miami Beach. We hear about the signs that said no Jews, no blacks, no dogs, and they might have said something else. But can you talk about that a little bit?
They were on the beach and in other places too, where whites frequented. It was just a sign of the time, part of the custom, and custom became law. It's interesting how custom evolves and starts because this is how people feel, and then they are elected to office, or they influence those who are in office. Look at what is happening now in our state,
right?
As it relates to race,
right?
And so that was the situation. And it's very interesting now because whenever I'm on the beach and I see all these black people.
It is amazing,
They don't know why I'm smiling.
Yeah, I go through the same thing sometimes when in particular when in the summertime, because it's the rates aren't as high, but it is a plethora of us on the beach. And, you know, we
yes.
have our challenges even now. It's spring break. And we know
Yes.
we've had the challenges with our young folks. And that's a whole nother conversation in itself. We talk about Miami Beach and obviously the likes of Sammy Davis Jr., Muhammad Ali, and others, Eartha Kitt, they can go over and they can perform.
Yes.
But then they had to come back over
Absolutely.
to the mainland.
Yes.
Talk
yes.
about that a little bit.
Well, that's the story. I mean, they could perform, and they did perform on the beach, and could not eat. If they wanted something to eat, they had to go into a side room. They had to come back to Overtown, to the Mary Elizabeth or the Sir John. And but when they got back at 2 o'clock in the morning, they were hoping to go to bed, but there would be a whole group of folks from Overtown
That wanted to be with these
yes,
stars.
yes,
Yeah.
who wanted a concert, right?
Right.
And of course, being in the business, they would just start and have those sessions.
Right.
And what people don't know is when they wanted to relax and go on vacation, many times they would come back to Miami and go to Georgette's Tea Room in Brownsville.
Okay.
Yes, have you ever heard of
No,
Georgette's Tea
I
Room?
hadn't heard. No, talk about that
Yes.
a little bit.
Now that's a business.
Right.
Yes, Georgette Scott Campbell from Georgia, came here in the early 20s and she brought Clyde Killens.
Okay.
Clyde Killens was
We're going to talk about Clyde Killens a little bit, so I'm going to put a pin in there, but go ahead.
Okay, Clyde Killens, and she was very much, and she was a cook, very good cook, and she stayed in Miami for a while and had a business right across from the Lyric. And then she went to Harlem. She went to New York.
Okay.
And opened a business on 125th Street and stayed there until the Harlem Renaissance started waning, and then came back to Miami and bought 3 lots in Brownsville and built a tea room, which is like a bed and breakfast now. Right. And she was my godmother, one of my godmothers, and I remember Nat King Cole, Billie Holiday. In fact, we have a picture with Billie Holiday there. Aretha Franklin, you name them.
Amazing.
Yes, when they wanted to be on vacation.
Right.
That's where they would go to relax.
Wow.
Yes.
And of course, our hotel, and all of a sudden I'm drawing a blank on 22nd Avenue.
Hampton House.
Hampton House.
Yes, I was with Enid Pinckney the other day.
Right.
Yes, who saved the Hampton House.
Correct.
Because it would have been torn down, like so many of our sites.
Absolutely.
And I have to say, we are, thanks to Graylin Swilly Woods, Dr. Graylin Swilly Woods has come to town within the last decade or two and has really moved through, starting with tourism. And now she's working, of course, with the Overtown children and youth.
Right.
And she's been working with me with the historic Overtown Folklife Village, because Uncle Sammy said, the radiologist said to me as he's giving me this building for the clinic, that you're going to need other buildings, you're going to need other businesses.
Right.
And
to
so
support.
To support what you are doing. And so this is not enough.
Going back to Clyde Killens and where I wanted to shift, and obviously we were talking about our history and the past, Miami, and those things that you partially experienced and the things that you researched. Now we're here in 2022, and Clyde Killens Pool Hall is now the Red Rooster. Talk about that. We only have a couple minutes left, but talk about that really quick and what you see as the future.
Adaptive reuse, finding a new use for a historic building. And we're trying to do more of that. We recognize the new construction with the 40 stories and the 50 stories and the 100 stories, but we also want people to see the character of the pioneer community.
Absolutely.
And the work that people did. I think it's great that Red Rooster is there, that they are one of the anchors across from the Lyric Theater.
Correct.
And what a lot of people don't understand, because they didn't witness it, but I did,
Right.
that the Harlem Square was on one corner, and the Mary Elizabeth, they were all
Right.
feeding off each other.
But Harlem Square is coming back.
Good.
We got some friends working on that.
Oh, wonderful.
So, you know,
Yes.
our time, this is just amazing. I mean, you and I talked, and we said we could talk for all
Yes.
day.
Yes.
But, you know, this has been the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce. I'm here with Dr. Dorothy Jenkins Fields, and it is the Chamber Connection. And I just want to thank you for joining us. Hi, I'm Erick Knowles, and this is the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce Member Connection, and here I go again. I'm excited. You know, working with the members of the Chamber is exciting. It's what I get to do every day, and working with this particular individual, the new golfer, is even more exciting. We get to go play golf together every now and then, but I'm with Dr. Delvina Thomas. How are you?
Hey. What an introduction.
Hey, we're keeping it real, you know.
We always do.
Yeah, we're real here at the Chamber. You know, I always keep it real, and we keep it real with one another.
Yeah.
But Brain Love.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's my baby.
That's your baby.
Yes.
But before we get into Brain Love, you know, I'm a former airborne paratrooper, and you are still engaged in the U.S. military. Talk about that. Tell us about you. Who's Dr. Delvina Thomas?
So I'm someone who's undeniably just present. I'm always straightforward. I'm always the person who's going to tell you things the way that they are, including my own patients. I don't, bull crap with my patients. And the same thing with my family and friends. So my mother used to tell me when I was younger, you are such a free spirit girl. You are such a free spirit. I was a little girl in elementary school, and I didn't know what that meant until later when I looked it up and I started reading about horoscopes and I'm an Aquarius. So that's who I am. I'm all of those things, and I'm a mother of a black son who's 25, and that is really the first priority of my life. Parenting is such a stressful part of life, and you have to find a way really to communicate with your children and to have and form the best bond that you can to make it less stressful. So it's stressful, but it's been enjoyable.
Right.
So
obviously, becoming a parent is probably our most important job, besides providing and taking care of them. But that's the job, providing and taking care of them.
Yep.
But you didn't talk about that other part.
What's the other part?
That soldier part.
I was an Army brat growing up.
Okay.
And I think that has a lot to do with who I am today, because I'm the third child. My parents had 3 children. I have 2 older brothers. I'm the only girl. My father joined the Army. I think he was 21 when he joined. Both of my parents are from Mississippi, descendants of sharecroppers, descendants of black gold, of slaves. My father joined the Army as a way to make money and get away. And he was able to take my mother out of Mississippi. Their first base was Okinawa, Japan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
That's
imagine that, being
Right.
from Mississippi and going to Japan.
Wow.
Yeah. My mother bought a kimono that I still have to this day.
That's
I
beautiful.
still have it. So, my brothers, they traveled more than I did because I was born in 76. I was born in Fort Riley, Kansas. We moved to Jersey. Then we went to Germany. And Germany was like one of the best Army bases my father was stationed on. Germany was the best part of my childhood, one of the best parts of my childhood. Okay. And then we came to Maryland, and he decided to retire when we were in Maryland. And that's where I went to high school, went to undergrad. I went up the road to Philadelphia for medical school, and then I did my residency training in psychiatry and neurology in Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
So the Army has always been a part of my life because of my father's, his influence. He was a drill sergeant at one point in time in his career.
All right.
Yeah. And he
Wow.
was, yeah. So that's a part of me. Just so when people, like some of my staff tell me I can be intimidating, I'm not a threatening boss. I'm not a horrible boss.
Right. But you just want things done the right way, and you want it done.
Yeah. And that's probably why I'm sort of a little bit type A personality, a little bit of OCD. But really to have those things, that's what makes a person great. That's what gives you the ability to exceed in your career and to exceed in education. Because going to medical school, it's a lot of work. You know, you take a lot of classes, and so you have to take on some of those traits to be successful and to get it done.
And the fact that you go through a training cycle for, 8 weeks or so?
Yeah.
And you're up every morning, basically at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and you're getting your troops out.
Now I'm the command surgeon for the Drill Sergeant Academy for the reservists up in North Carolina, right? And so I see that it requires schooling. And I mean, I know that from before with being a psychiatrist for the military, I have to do evaluations for people to go to school because for folks to go to like Drill Sergeant Academy, recruiting school, and some of these other specialty schools, they have to have mental health clearance.
Okay.
So I realized early in my career with the military that these people required schooling.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, and they have to have a mental health clearance to go.
Okay.
And the school that's dreaded the most is Drill Sergeant Academy.
It has to be.
No one wants to go because you said 4 or 5 o'clock. They're up at like 3 a.m. trying to prep for their soldiers and stuff.
Right.
You know.
Oh,
so.
I trust me. I really had an admiration for my drill sergeants because, you know, they were about business. But the one thing that I realized is if you did your job, they gave you what you needed. Now, if you were a slacker, they gave you what you needed.
A slug.
As well.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward. You still didn't let people know you are still in the Army.
I am, yeah. So 9/11 happened. I was a second-year medical student. I was in Delaware doing a cardiology rotation. And I don't know, probably a week or 2 weeks later, a recruiter came to the medical school and said, the Army needs physicians, and we only need certain physicians. We want certain specialties. They wanted surgeons, they wanted OB-GYNs, they wanted psychiatrists. They didn't want like internal medicine docs. They wanted people specializing in certain fields. And I knew I was going to go into a psychiatry residency. And I was like, you know, I've been toying with the idea of joining the military. I had an ROTC scholarship in high school, but I didn't accept it because I was afraid that once I graduated college, that the Army would not allow me to continue onward to go to medical school.
Right.
So I had that fear. And talking to this recruiter, I was like, hey, I want to do this. And like I said, 9/11 just happened. They created this whole program for physicians so that in the beginning, it was loan repayment of $50,000. And then a couple of years later, they bumped it up to $250,000 because they weren't getting enough physicians.
Wow.
And I'm one of these people where I'm like, if I can double dip, I'm going to double dip. And my family, as I said, is military, and so you know,
you got it.
My mom worked for the federal government, you know, and so I learned about pensions and retirement, and I was like, man, if I join the military and don't have to pay back student loans, if I don't have, because some of my colleagues have student loans that really equate to a mortgage,
right?
You know, $200,000 and $300,000 of student loans from undergrad, and you know, getting a master's and then getting a medical degree. And the military was paying me as well while I was in medical school. They were giving me a check every month like I was drilling. Those years went towards my retirement. I was able to buy my first home when I was in residency. Most people were renting then. And so that established my whole outlook on investments. Right. You know, owning property so that you can flip it and make money, or having a portfolio that was diversified. So the military for me was functional for many ways. It gave me an opportunity to be patriotic. It gave me an opportunity to expand our legacy, my family's legacy, with myself being in the military after my father and my aunts and my uncles. And it made greater financial opportunities. I deployed to Iraq, I went to Afghanistan, and because of those deployments, the military gave me what's called the 9/11 GI Bill. I'm all schooled out. I can't go to school anymore. I just can't do it.
Right.
So I passed it on to my son. So I didn't have to pay for him to go to college. He got an MBA recently. The military paid for his MBA.
Wow.
So it just, in so many ways, it has enhanced my financial abilities.
Right. So, Dr. Delvina.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you were coming in, I said that you were a brain surgeon. And, well, you know, not literally, you don't, you know.
I don't use my hands.
You don't use your hands,
surgery,
but
I
you
use my mind
do surgery with your mind. Let's talk about that a little bit. I know mental health has become a very big conversation, in particular with the pandemic. In the last, we've been still in the pandemic. We're still wearing masks. We're still having to be tested to travel, and I know you're a big traveler.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit. How has it impacted your business? And obviously, you were doing this before the pandemic hit. What has been the difference? Or talk about it a little bit.
So, and it's not just me. I have a team of 9 other providers. We have a wellness spa as well, where we have a couple of folks who are doing things. Mental wellness, I tell people all the time, life is challenging. Life is not meant to be easy. It is not supposed to be easy. But when you take the approach that this ain't supposed to happen, that wasn't supposed to happen, it's not supposed to feel this way, that's when you disappoint yourself and you fall into this trap of feeling down, feeling blue. If you get up every day and know that there will be some challenge possibly, potentially awaiting you, then when it happens, it won't feel so unnerving for you.
Right.
And so just being out in the community, going to hospitals, going to facilities, I run into people, I run into folks who are mental health providers, and they all want to come and work for me. And the way I hired my staff, it was so very organic. I did not put out any ads. I did not seek people. I didn't ask people, hey, I'm looking for this or looking for that. Some of the psychiatric nurse practitioners, actually all of them, rotated through my office during a part of their class requirements, except for one. Dr. Mays was referred to me by one of my students. So it's an organic thing where we had contact out in the community, and I suppose our energy was congruent. Our energies were the same. There's certain types of people I don't allow in my space. I'm very particular about that, and I try to pass this on to my patients too. A lot of times people have the chaos that they do in their life because they allow that chaos in their life. They don't cut it off.
Right.
And so, I talk about having a circle, having people in the inside of your circle who are positive thinkers, who are givers, who reciprocate the energy that you give to them, the time that you give to them. And the people who are negative, you got to push them all the way to the outside of the circle.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Right. And it could be your own blood. It could be your relative.
Oh, yeah.
I have one life to live that I know of. I don't know that there's anything after we leave here.
Yeah, so you and I talked about that the other day.
Yes, sir. Yeah. So it has to be the best one you can make it. So I am so grateful for the people who work on my team. I say we work together. They don't work for me. We work together. A lot of them are entrepreneurs as well. They have their own businesses too, and they do some other things too out in the community. The thing about money is you can't allow your money to come from one source. You know that.
I know that. And, we talked about that the other day as well. And it's interesting that you say that because Matthew, who's on the team, he shared an article that spoke about where we are today in terms of employees and people working together and the fact that people have other interests. And I have always been that person that had other interests. A good friend of mine says you got to have more than one popcorn stand. To me, work obviously is fulfilling a goal and a means to take care of your family. But at the same time, one has to, from my perspective, embrace one's own self and those talents and energies that really makes you a fully rounded person. So to hear you say that you have employees that have their own interests and entrepreneurial aspirations, et cetera, that's great.
Yeah.
And it's something, again, this article talked about how that's happening more.
I think with social media, the spread of social media, people talking about getting out there, taking chances, doing things on your own. Why are you in here making money for someone else when you could be making money for yourself?
Yeah.
But, everyone's not going to follow that path
No.
because some people are just satisfied and they're good with being plain, being vanilla. And I don't say that in a negative or derogatory way.
Right.
Some people don't want, because extra work comes with being a creative.
Right, but some people don't have the ability.
That
because
too.
it's one thing to, you always hear me say, it's one thing to be a great artist, a great cook, a great designer.
Yes.
But if you don't have the back of the house together, that part, you're going to fail, and then you're going to be miserable because why isn't your business growing? Because you haven't done those things besides.
Just be great at your craft.
Exactly.
And it takes more than that,
exactly.
to run a business. Absolutely.
Exactly.
And to your point, I think people realized that more during the pandemic. There were, and still are, a lot of fakers out here. Oh, I own my own business. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But yet on paper with the IRS or with the state of Florida.
Well, first of all, going back to my whole point about having the back of your house together, I have this business going, but do you have an EIN number? Do you have a CPA? Do you have a marketing team? Do you have a public relations? Do you have a lawyer? Are you even formed as a...
Do you have an accountant? And are you paying quarterly taxes?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. What would you like to share with our audience before we shut it down?
You don't have to be sad. We can all be content. I don't want to say happy because I think that's one of the things that gets people into trouble. They think they're supposed to be on cloud 9 all the time. And that's not how life works.
No.
We got to be satisfied with being content and knowing the difference between being in the middle, being content, versus feeling down in the dumps or feeling sad, which all of us will experience those days. That's just how life is. It ain't perfect, and neither is your brain. And then there's days when you may feel like you're on cloud 9, you'll feel happy. And so you have to learn your therapy too. You have to learn what makes you vibe, what gives you energy, what helps you to relax, what brings you joy.
Right.
Know what your therapy is and engage in it. And also, don't allow yourself to get into a place in life where you're by yourself and you have no one. I just talked to a patient the other day, and she doesn't have anyone. She has a couple of friends, but she doesn't have a solid support group. As you're living and working and doing these things, you have to think about that. You have to build your support network. And it doesn't have to be family, blood relatives. It can be,
Absolutely not.
People you grew up with, people you worked with, people you went to school with. I have a harem of, I don't want to say harem. I have a tribe. I meant to say a tribe. I talk a lot about relationships and sex. So my brain went somewhere else.
Yeah, we didn't even go there today.
I went somewhere else. I have a tribe of associates and friends from different, just different parts of my life.
I get it. A good friend of mine called me this morning, man. He said, man, let's call to tell you I love you. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But that other thing that you spoke about is a way that I've lived. I say I have one of those. I have another popcorn stand, as I said. I've been an actor and a model all of my life, in and out. And the one thing that has kept me on that even keel, when you're going on castings and you're trying to get that job, you don't get them all. You might get 10%, 20%. So when they don't happen, you can't be disappointed. And then you can't be on this high, as you said, when it does happen. Oh, I'm the greatest, or I just got. I mean, it's good to feel that, but then on the woosah.
Right.
This has been amazing. I can go on for a day or two talking to this young lady.
Yeah, because we didn't even define brain love. Brain love is an acronym, but next time.
Next time we'll get into brain love. Or just go to our website.
drdelvina.health. It's D as in Delta, E-L-V as in Victor, E-N as in November, A.help, H-E-L-P.
And you can find out about Brain Love. You can find out more about what she's doing. And if you want to know more about the Chamber, go to www.m-dcc.org or call the Chamber at 305-751-8648. Ask for Beverly and become a member. Hi, I'm Erick Knowles, president of the Miami Dade Chamber of Commerce, and this is our Member Connection. This is International Women's Month, celebrating women all over the world, but in particular, we are celebrating our members of the Chamber. And today, I got Dr. E. Let's put the phone down. Dr. E, how are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Well, tell folks who Dr. E is. Igbinoba.
All right. Well, I'm Dr. Egosa Passion Igbinoba, and I'm a Miami native who is a graduate of Miami-Dade Public Schools.
Okay.
And I went on after that to Howard University studying music, and then I actually came back to Florida to study education leadership at Nova Southeastern University. So I've been, my life continues to be a whirlwind, going around, always into lots of things, but always enjoying and seeking to be excellent at what I do.
And the other thing I want to talk about is the fact that you are the chairwoman of our education committee.
Yes, yes.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit. Oh, let's back up first. So you went to Howard
Yes.
for music.
Yes.
So talk about that a little bit.
Okay, so I actually initially went to Howard on a full scholarship to study biology because my first choice for a career was to be a medical doctor.
Okay.
I spent 1 year as a biology major, and I said, this is not really me. I don't know if this is what I want to do for life. And so I switched to my major to music, and I studied voice for jazz studies.
Okay,
and
I can hear that. I can hear that.
So I am a vocalist, and I still do that. Pandemic has sort of slowed it down, but it's
Okay.
something that has always been and will continue to be a part of what I do. Anybody that knows Nigerian parents, the stereotypical Nigerian parents, when I switched from biology to music, my father was irate.
Right?
But my mom helped him to calm down a little bit and say, hey, it's her life. As long as she's happy, and she just wanted to make sure, do you still have that scholarship money? And thank goodness that the scholarship was transferable. It didn't matter what my major was.
Right.
And I was able to transfer the scholarship money over to music. So I got a bachelor and a master of music at Howard.
The fact that you are a vocal artist, that, you know, what you're doing, which we're going to talk about, that other entrepreneurial side of you, doesn't keep you from pursuing that I don't even want to say dream. That's who you are, that passion.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's definitely a part of me. Another thing about my culture as a Nigerian is that names are extremely important. And so my mother gave me the middle name Passion because they believe that you mark your children with names. And I'd say, well, if that's true, she certainly marked me with Passion being my middle name because I really, that has been my life's direction, continuing to follow my passions. Sometimes it's got me in a little trouble on the personal side, but it still makes for a beautiful life and never a dull moment, should I say.
Right. So let's go back to this entrepreneurial journey.
Well, I was able to, because of being a music major, I spent 8 years being a music teacher in DC public schools, as well as a couple of years in Broward and in Miami-Dade as well. But most of my career as a teacher was in DC public schools. And then after that, because of that, there was every time there are cuts in budget, we know who a lot of times is cut first, and that is the arts.
Right.
And so at a point, there was a cut in budget, and I had to look for another job. Lucky for me, I was a business minor when I was at Howard. So I actually became a business administration teacher for several years and made my way as a career and technical education educator. And so from there, around that same time, after I had been doing that for about 4 years, I finished my doctorate in education leadership. And so that led me to be a consultant. I wanted something different. I said, I think my years are up as a classroom teacher. I would like to do something different. And so that led me to be an education consultant. And so just saying all that to say the journey just has continued to evolve to the point where I was an education consultant, and that led me to say I would like to actually do this. I don't want to work for someone else as a consultant. I'd like to have my own business as a consultant. And so I've always done the music as a side hustle.
Right.
I've always done even music as a first hustle and a side hustle because I was a music teacher. But now the consulting, education management consulting is also a part of what I do as well. And I actually got to teach entrepreneurship as a business administration teacher, which helped me to learn and not be afraid to step out on my own and try to be an entrepreneur myself. So lots of different ways and paths, but my life has led me from music major to music teacher to business teacher to education consultant to entrepreneur. So
Okay.
that was the pathway.
What drove that for you? And I know you said you taught, you were in the school system, but what drives your entrepreneurial spirit?
I think that it's in my DNA, one, because my grandmother, from what my father shared, my grandmother on my father's side in Nigeria was an entrepreneur. She was a market woman, so she was the plug, should I say. You go to her when you need something. So I said, it must be in my DNA. And I believe that my great-grandmother also on my mother's side actually owned a restaurant at a point. So I think it's a little bit in my DNA. I also think that being an artist helps to fuel my dreams of entrepreneurship because that artist in me was tired of the four walls every day. And so I had that passion for education, and I still do, but I said, how can I impact in a different way?
Right.
The four walls and the clock 9 to 5 just wasn't getting it for me anymore. I wanted something different. I didn't want the monotony of the schedule and the monotony of, okay, winter, spring, summer, fall, we're all for the summer, we start back in September. I love the variety and the departure from monotony that entrepreneurship offers.
Mm-hmm. Your mother and their entrepreneurial spirit. Obviously, you're of Nigerian background. And how does that really impact your way of thinking here, in America, in Miami? I mean, you grew up here, basically. Mm-hmm. But having that legacy of grandmother, great-grandmother, and your name is your name.
Yes.
It's your family's name, unlike those of us in America who have, for lack of a better word, slave names. How does that influence you?
Okay. Well, actually, my mother is African American. She's a South Florida native. So her family made their way from North Florida down to West Palm Beach, and then she grew up in Miami. So she's African American, and my father is a Nigerian immigrant, and they somehow met and fell in love in the 70s and made wonderful me. But saying that to say, what it gave me growing up was a more global perspective of the world. I knew about money exchange from a very young age because, my father was traveling and he would bring back money that actually had black people on it. Some kids don't get that experience, and they don't understand that it's not 11:30 in Nigeria right now. It's another time. And so from a young age, I had a more global perspective. Mm-hmm. And I would venture to say that I was also bicultural, not biracial. Both of my parents are black, but bicultural, meaning that I understood and knew how to navigate within African American culture, because that's what my mother is. And most of the time we are mostly, raised by our mothers, especially if you have a dad that's, out there working and, and doing those things. And then also experiencing my father's culture as well. And so I think at least growing up that way, it makes me a very open-minded and malleable person. Mm-hmm. I'm able to fit in various venues.
Okay.
And especially also, again, being that artist and walking the line, what I believe my life has been, walking a line between scholarship and artistry at all times. So again, I feel like I can navigate different rooms, different spaces, because I've always had an open view of not just one perspective, having multiple perspectives and being able to see things from multiple angles.
Okay. Now, we talked about the chamber in terms of you being the chairwoman of the education committee. And I know we just came back from Tallahassee a few months ago talking about advocacy and talking about policy and changing how we are impacted as a Black business community. What do you see the education committee, the direction and how you will impact education? And think about education, it's just not when we think about, I guess you would say parochial education, but education for entrepreneurs and business persons.
Yes, so it's funny you should use the word impact because as the leadership team and I were working on and considering how to sort of revive and stand up the committee's efforts for this year, the theme that we came up with was impact.
Okay.
And so we said, how can we impact outwardly as well as inwardly?
Okay.
And so we came up with the idea to have 3 subcommittees. One would be resources. So again, like you mentioned, education and resources for our members and whatever we need to be able to grow and scale our businesses and achieve whatever goals we have for our businesses. And then outwardly we have a student outreach subcommittee where we will look for and devise ways to have an impact outwardly for all students. And we had to do this. At first, our description was high school and higher ed, but someone spoke up and said, don't forget about the little ones, pre-K through middle school. So we made sure that we included that now in our efforts and in our thoughts and framing as well. And then the last committee is events, because we want to make sure that we also have a good time. So we're going to make sure that we have some ways for us to network and connect with each other as well. So you hit it right on the head with impact, outward, inward, and looking for ways that we're going to definitely try to have an impact in the community as the education committee of the chamber.
You mentioned high school and college, but then also elementary. I have a daughter who is graduating from FAMU in April, and has this entrepreneurial spirit. So what is your perspective? I mean, and I'm in meetings all the time, and I just was in a meeting a couple days ago, and it was about franchising opportunities. And our young folks today, they want to be entrepreneurs. And the one comment that I made was that basically everything that we see came from somebody's entrepreneurial spirit, okay? The gas station's on the corner because somebody wanted to open their own business, their gas station. Burger King, McDonald's, etc. These all came from entrepreneurs. Colonel Sanders, Kentucky Fried Chicken. So what is being an educator, what do you say to these young folks?
I would say be ready. Be ready for the ups and downs. Go into entrepreneurship knowing that it's a long play. It's not a short play. You may see Instagram and people getting immediate gratification. Oh, I started my business a month ago and I'm a millionaire. It could possibly happen, but guess what? They're 1 in a million of the rest of the entrepreneurs who it may take 3-4 years
10,
to build
20.
To build their business. And I use as an example all the time that even the IRS expects that your business may not be profitable for the first few years. So they're not even going to look if you're saying, I wasn't profitable this year, I started my business this year.
Right.
Because that's the realness of it, is that entrepreneurship is a long play. There are going to be ups and downs, and make sure that you enter in it not for the money, but do it because, again, going back to that word, because it's something that you're passionate about, because then the money will come, but you will be able to insert your passion into what you're doing. And because you don't want to get, just like with a 9-to-5 job and working for someone else, you don't want to start a business that you're not really passionate about, because at least for that job, maybe you're only working 40 hours a week. But entrepreneur, you're getting ready to work 60 to 80 hours on your on this business,
right?
And until it's at a point where you can hire others to work for you and you're making passive income. So just know, enter into entrepreneurship knowing that you should do something that still is what you're passionate about, because if you're not, you'll be right back out of entrepreneurship. Like many businesses, I think it's 50% fail every year because they don't stick with it, because it's not what they expected. So go in with an educated perspective, knowing exactly what you're getting into, and being aware of the pitfalls, having a mentor, looking for good advice, knowing that you need to continue to be educated. Just because you graduate in April, don't think, oh, I got a degree, I know it all now. No, you still need to go to workshops. You still need to talk to other folks. You still need to continue to network. And sometimes that a little bit of advice that you got from someone at a networking event could be the next thing that you need for the next level. So just those are the things that I would share.
Yeah. And, you think about education. I always look at colleges. Basically, it's telling a prospective employer that you are able to learn or do a job because you have, the ability to learn. You're taking those 4 years or 6 years or whatever, learning a particular skill, but now you have to go into that setting. But going back to that entrepreneur, as I always say, having the back of your house together, and a lot of folks are great at what they do. They may, as I say, may be a great cook, they may be a great designer, but if they don't have those things behind them, the right legal setup, the right marketing team behind them, PR, the CPA, accountants. So that is the part of business that a lot of people fail at. Even when here in the middle of the pandemic, people were not able to access PPP because, again, they didn't have their back of their house together. Something as simple as not having their EIN updated. They didn't pay their state on their state taxes on their incorporation or their business. They didn't pay their local taxes with the county or the municipality that they're in. So those little nuances can keep you from moving forward. So what would be some of the last words you would like to share with our audience?
I would just say that entrepreneurship has been a great journey, and it's a journey that I hope to continue on. And as you said, have your house in order. You don't have to get ready if you stay ready.
There you go.
And I'll say, do it with passion or not at all. That's my mantra.
I like that. Sing it out loud.
Yes.
Well, this has been another great day here. It is International Women's Month. We're celebrating women this month. And this has been the Miami Dade Chamber of Commerce. If you want to know more about the Chamber, you can go to www.m-dcc, or you can call the Chamber at 305-751-8648. And Dr. E, if they want to get in touch with you?
Yes, you can email me at agosa@passionfirerise.com. I think that'll be in the text somewhere as well. And then I have two websites because I have two businesses. One is hopepunk.net, where I sell women's statement accessories. And then, as I mentioned before, education management consulting services at evolutiontms.com.
Thank you for joining the Miami-Dade Chamber. See you at the next Member Connection.